Well, thank all the testifiers, and I'll start with my questions. Mr. Yoshimi, what's the current implementation plan and the status for the funds that were set aside for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands in the fiscal year 21 Consolidated Appropriations Act?
Senator, thank you for the question. The department has put together its preliminary plans and submitted that as part of its original proposal, as you mentioned, to NTIA. The plans involve a number of different elements, including delivery of services and supports directly to the community, as well as significant investments in infrastructure, both in fiber as well as fixed wireless services to support all of the community members. There's a lot of work to do in it, even though there are estimates of costs, as you folks know, and as construction goes, there are a lot of details to work through in terms of siting, in terms of determining exactly how those costs will be deployed as part of the execution process. As you mentioned earlier in your question with Mr. Geisler from NTIA, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands does not yet have an agreement with NTIA in terms of executing on the initial CEA grant, but we are hopeful that by putting heads together and really getting the NTIA and DHHL to work collaboratively together, that we can get this to move forward. Obviously, folks are frustrated with the amount of time that's ticked away so far, as I'm sure you are. We are very interested in making sure that the DHHL plans can be executed on as soon as possible, and in particular with the availability of additional funds available under IJA. And of course, as we mentioned, we would work together with them to coordinate their work with the rest of the state work that we're responsible for.
Maybe it's imprudent for me to ask here, but my curiosity is sort of killing me here. I still don't understand what NTIA was saying about the DHHL application. Can you shed some light on that, or is that going to get you in trouble?
Uh, I will try and maybe describe to the best of my knowledge. And the folks at NTIA have worked directly with the leaders at DHHL to try and work through this. I understand there's some frustration on the part of both parties, and some of that I believe is sourced out of some of the process and procedure restrictions that the DHHL operates under as a state entity. Some of those are procurement and contracting laws and policies. Obviously there's lots of ways to work through the elements, and I think, in my opinion, one of the best ways to work through this is, perhaps to at least get some agreement in place to move forward, and then do some coordination during execution so that we can be assured that DHHL provides the necessary assurances and compliance back to NTIA to get the work done. I think there's kind of the missing a little bit back and forth in some of the conversations to date. At least that's my understanding, based on
So,
conversations with
so
the
each
DHHL.
level of government, each agency has their own rules, and they're trying to sync
But
them
they,
up.
yeah, they kind of go like this. And I think, it is important. I think DHHL is a little bit different than some of the other entities that NTIA has dealt with in the past. But there's always a way to get this stuff done. And really, it's a matter, I think, of getting heads together. And obviously, we would be happy to participate in that as well, to move this forward. Because I think it's critically important to get us into execution.
Well, let me know what I can do, and obviously the same goes for Mr. Isla and Mr. Gomes over at DHHL. We want to get this done. I'm still confident it'll get done. I just wanted to kind of understand what the problem was. Vice
Thank
Chair Markowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nicole, thank you for being so specific in terms of the guidance to the committee. I think probably the others on the panel would agree that we can't make roads happen, we can't make water infrastructure happen unless we have some sense to the permitting process. And so keenly identifying a couple of things that we need to focus on, joint MOUs, but also the FAST Act itself. You and the folks at AFN did a great job in supporting us with the infrastructure grant symposium that we had last month. But it was your navigator program and that cadre of regional navigators that I think are going to be important. They were important then, but they're going to be important moving forward as we're all seeking to access the opportunities that are coming from the infrastructure bill. So given that, do you have any recommendations for best practices that you might offer to the White House Council on Native American Affairs or the BIA as to how they might create a larger federal navigator program? You've got the navigator programs over at DOI. You are having them set up an interagency coordinator position to assist tribes. So it seems to me we're designating lots of individuals and entities to be there to help, but how does the individual tribe and in a remote area know even where to go? So any guidance on this?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator Murkowski. It is difficult for individual tribes in Alaska. We have 229 of them. They are small, they are undercapitalized. In a lot of instances, they are far removed from our bigger cities, which are not really big cities compared to the lower 48. And internet connections are stable if they have them at all. So I would encourage the tribes in Alaska and to the lower 48, if it applies to them in their regions, to really work through their regional bodies that they have established. The good thing is that there are several national, statewide organizations, and we are sort of repeating each other's efforts, tracking the grants, making sure that the Native communities know about them and how to apply for them. In terms of what can all of the other federal agencies do to help along the way, go out and hire folks like Adam and Fatma and Lucy and Amber and put them to work. We don't need more individuals who are doing things the same way that has been done for the past couple of decades. We need fresh ideas. We need hard workers, folks that are willing to think out of the box. It's not good enough in Indian country and across the islands to hit send on an email. That's not how we reach our people. That's not how we're doing it through the Navigator program. We are faxing. We are using public radio. We are using VHFs. In some instances, we have tracked down a tribal administrator on a commercial fishing vessel in the middle of Bristol Bay during the salmon run and said, you have to get back to your office. You have 24 hours to apply for the mandatory minimum ARPA employment allocation that will come to your tribe. So it's going those extra miles. But if we just continue to box check, which also is an unfortunate occurrence a lot of times when we do tribal consultations, we're not going to get there. So I often tell federal agencies, if the federal government wants to learn how to consult with Native communities and tribes, sign up for one of Adam Geisler's tribal consultations. We will wait on the line for 8 hours because he stays on the line with us for 8 hours. He knows about the programs. If he doesn't know about them, he writes it down and he follows up. Other agencies oftentimes say, thank you, your 2 minutes is up, move on to the next person. So those might be a little bit too plain and direct, but
I don't think they are too plain and direct at all. I think we know whether you're in the islands or whether you're in Alaska or you're in South Dakota. As you say, people are communicating in different ways, and they're not waiting for that email to come across to find out what they're supposed to be doing next. Doesn't translate that way. So thank you for making it real, and again, the very, very genuine efforts that the Navigator program has made, and clearly it's yielding dividends. So I would commend that to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Frazier, first of all, let me just say thank you for being here. It is always good to see you, sir. And I think what you have just represented to the committee in terms of the challenges that you face and the frustration with regard to trying to get a fair funding formula for transportation services is I think you laid it out as well as anybody has in front of this committee. And I would also suggest that the discussion that the ranking member and Ms. Borromeo have just had regarding consultation is critical as well. And it's one thing that you and I had in my office here just recently, and that is the need for that consultation. Let's just visit for a little bit about that funding formula, though. I don't think folks realize that when that funding formula was put into effect for large area tribes that such as yours right there at the Cheyenne and River Sioux tribe, or the Rosebud or the Pine Ridge, in each of those cases, the population is not great, but the number of roads that have to be serviced is significant. And yet the formula does not take that into account. Talk with us a little bit about the frustration that you found with that. You kind of got into it in your opening statement, but I think we should elaborate on it. What happens when you walk in and you find yourself, what can you do with 300 miles of gravel road and you pick up a couple $1,000,000 a year on it total? What can you actually do in some of the frustrations you receive just in terms of the washouts and what happens if you lose a road and what kind of a detour that means for the folks that are in your communities?
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm going to ask Mr. Longbreak or Transportation to come up but kind of just to, it's really, really frustrating, to, you go to the BIA, which they have the trust responsibility to, and it's their road. They own the road, but yet they have no money. And, it's very frustrating. And this formula, when you look at the where the money goes, I think it's almost criminal because in there it talks about zero population, zero, but yet some people are still getting money for roads. How can you fund something that nobody lives there, according to the formula? And when we look at that, they use a lot of the HUD numbers. We have 25,000 members on our reservation, but yet that HUD formula says we only have 6,000. Where did they go? So, I mean, it's a numbers game that is not benefiting us, but I guess Mr. Longbreak can kind of shed more little light on that.
Identify yourself very quickly with the chairman's permission so we know who we're and what you do, please.
Good afternoon and good morning in Hawaii. I'm Dakota Longbreak. I'm the Director of Transportation for the tribe. I'm also the chairman of the TTP Coordinating Committee, and I am the co-chairman of the TBIC Road Maintenance Committee as well. The biggest issue with the new formula is it was put in place at the beginning of MAP 21. It's been in statute since then. The formula is set up to keep, if you did well previous to MAP 21 and your tribe received a lot of money through previous transportation bills, this formula is set up to keep tribes basically at that funding level. There's different mechanisms within the formula, the supplemental part, the last part of Part B, all of those things try to get you back up to the level of funding you were at in 2012. Unfortunately for our tribe and a lot of large land-based tribes, that weren't very, very active in the early 2000s on increasing your road mileage with county road miles and tribally owned miles and things like that, we're stuck now back to this. The formula uses the road inventory miles from 2011, right? There's been a lot of miles of roads added to the inventory since 2011, but the statute is stuck with the 2011 funding year. So even if a tribe wanted to add 1,000 miles of new road, you wouldn't get any money at all for adding any of those new miles.
So let me get to the bottom of this with the chairman then. In reality, what you're saying is we can't fix the formula without an act of Congress.
Yes, that's correct.
That's kind of scary. Thank you for that. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have to move forward and talk about appropriately fixing the funding formula for roads across this country and make it fair to everybody involved in it. I want to talk a little bit about the Promise Bridge. I was on one of those gravel roads with you, Mr. Chairman. We drove those gravel roads. Some of them are washing out right now. But the Promise Bridge is another example one. This was supposed to be, I think, a 5-span bridge back in the 1950s. Corps of Engineers built it, intending for it to be there for a long period of time. I also drove by the residential spots behind it. Not a lot of high-value homes in there. Corps recognized that. They knew that there was a cemetery there. And yet they put in a shortened spanned bridge that saved them about $110,000 back at that time period. And in doing so, they understood that even though it should have been a 5-span, it was a 3-span. And that water backs up whenever we have a major water event. And when it does, it backs up over the cemetery of our relatives back there. and it backs up into that housing area. And so what we've got is a case once again of trying to work for years. In fact, you've been in court, you've come out of court and agreed to work with the court to fix it. Once again, it's a matter of not having the appropriate type of transportation funds, even to fix a bridge that's causing problems for an entire small community, but literally flooding the cemetery of your relatives right now.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things, and I want to echo, and I believe she mentioned about $13 billion coming to Indian country, and that's awesome. And we're like, wow, cool. But in reality, hardly nothing's coming down, and I don't know where it's going. But it ain't coming to Indian country to fix the bridge, to fix our roads. And that's something that we really find very, frustrating in that formula, because, that's what it's designed for, roads. And it's unreal.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for coming, for traveling over the gravel roads, two plane tickets to get here and so forth. But, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your patience as I go over time here. And thank you for this hearing as well.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. If there are no more questions for our witnesses, members may submit follow-up questions for the record. The hearing record will be open for 2 weeks. I want to thank all the witnesses for their time and their testimony. This hearing is adjourned.
Can we go to the Senate?